The National Desk, America's News, now.
Tropical Storm Alberto is official and threatens the Gulf Coast with rain, wind, and flooding. Just how bad of a hurricane season we can expect. Rising debt. The Congressional Budget Office gives a new worrying update to annual deficit projections, what it means for a figurative fiscal cliff that could be rapidly approaching.
Postpartum blues we see in about 75% of women. Then 1 in 7 will go on to develop postpartum depression.
Winning the battle against postpartum depression, the latest therapies available to new mothers. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and right now, Tropical Storm Alberto about to officially make landfall in Mexico as its northern bands are dumping tremendous amounts of rain over South Texas. The National Weather Service is predicting rainfall amounts of 5 to 10 inches, and forecasters say moderate coastal flooding is likely along much of the Texas coast through Thursday. Alberto is the first named storm of the season that began on June 1st. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is predicting a very busy hurricane season of possibly 25 named storms and as many as 13 hurricanes by November 30th. The other big story, weather story, excessive heat. 78 million people under heat alerts today as a heat wave maintains its grip over the United States for a 4th day now. Parts of Illinois, Ohio, upstate New York, and Vermont are under a 4 out of 4 extreme heat warning today. Parts of the Southwest and Southeast are on a moderate warning as well. And today marked the Juneteenth holiday, also known as Freedom Day. It has been a federally recognized holiday for 3 years, but has roots in Texas as it commemorates the day that slaves in Galveston were informed of their freedom 2 years after President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Events happening all over the country, from freedom walks and festivals to the honoring of influential Black Americans. The executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative telling CNN commemorating the holiday lies at the intersection of mourning an ugly past and celebrating a bright future.
I'm the descendant of enslaved people. I would not be here if my great-grandparents hadn't found a way to love despite all of the horrors of slavery and create a new generation. And we are the heirs of, yes, a lot of that trauma and abuse and degradation, but we also are the heirs of people who learned to persevere, people who were resilient, people who found a way to resist, people who knew their humanity and their dignity despite what the law said about them. And that is something to celebrate.
And today's celebrations of Black military service when 26 veterans were honored with a free flight to Washington, D.C. to tour veteran memorials. They were welcomed to big rounds of applause at Washington Reagan Airport. And tonight, we are learning at least 16 states have been impacted by pollution from the East Palestine train derailment. That's according to a new study by IOP Science, which says toxic chemicals in rainwater hit most states from Wisconsin to South Carolina, all the way up to the Northeast. The report says 540,000 square miles, or about 15% of the U.S. landmass, was impacted, but says most pollutants vanished within 3 weeks after the crash. 9 children are now recovering after a house collapsed in Syracuse, New York. That's according to the fire department there. The other 4 victims are in stable condition. The fire department, police, and other officials are working to figure out what caused the collapse. It followed a reported explosion yesterday that happened when 13 people were inside the home. The national debt, it could increase by more than $20 trillion in 10 years. That's according to a report by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Just how close are we to falling off a quote-unquote fiscal cliff? National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us now from Capitol Hill.
The national debt continues to head in the wrong direction and at an accelerated pace. On Tuesday, the Congressional Budget Office releasing an updated report predicting the debt clock will hit and surpass the $56 trillion mark by 2034. At the moment, the debt remains just under $35 trillion. This comes as the U.S. continues to spend more money than it collects in taxes.
Continuing to spend massively more than we take in and adding every year massively to the national debt will not go on forever. And unless we deal with it in a constructive way, we will have a financial catastrophe at some point.
For 2024, the CBO predicting the U.S. will spend $1.9 trillion more than it brings in. That's up from the initially predicted $1.6 trillion deficit for this year. The increase was largely driven by President Biden canceling $100 billion in student loan debt, as well as the ballooning costs of aiding Ukraine and Israel, and increased Medicaid spending.
We have a political system where instead of doing any of the necessary hard things that budgets require, our politicians seem to bury their heads in the sand.
A partial or full extension of Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts, which Biden and Trump have said they support to varying degrees, will increase the deficits further.
It's not just spending. It is both spending and taxing. You have to do both in order to reach balance.
And Amira, the leaders elected this fall will have to make a series of important decisions impacting the country's financial situation, including whether to raise the debt limit, and if so, by how much. Also, whether or not to extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts, and decisions on health care subsidies.
Big decisions for sure. Back in March, the White House released a budget proposal they claim would reduce the budget deficit by roughly $3 trillion over the next 10 years. That's a lot of money. How's the White House responding to this latest report?
Yeah, at this point, any type of reduction is good news, but this report appears to discredit the White House's claim that President Biden lowered the deficit because borrowing increased in 2023, and it's on track to rise yet again this year. That's according to the latest CBO data we just talked about. Now, in response, the White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre doubled down, claiming the report is further evidence Congress needs to pass Joe Biden's plan. But also at hand here are Trump's tax cuts from 2017. They expire next year, and if they're kept in place, they will add $5 trillion to the debt by 2034. Amira.
Certainly some moving parts as we move forward here. Live from Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thanks for breaking it all down. Right now, a shelter-in-place order in effect in Los Angeles as police search for a convicted murderer out on parole. Ezekiel Garcia escaped after an 8-hour-long standoff last night with police. The LAPD was called to investigate an armed suspect barricaded inside a business. Police did find an abandoned shotgun, but warned that Garcia should be considered armed and dangerous as the search continues. Interstate 5 in Portland, Oregon, back open tonight after a large fire forced it to close for most of the day yesterday. Crews responded to reports that a trailer hauling 120 propane tanks caught fire, in some cases exploding. Police say it was probably because of a mechanical issue. A Portland resident says he heard a loud bang around the time crews got there.
I thought I might have to evacuate. It was so crazy loud and intense. I came down here to realize it was a truck that was exploding over and over again.
Police continue to investigate. And we give you now a live look over Eugene, Oregon, where the Oregon rebate proposal has qualified to be on the November 2024 election ballot. The plan would give every Oregon resident about $750 if passed to pay for the rebate. A 3% tax increase would be enacted on all Oregon corporations making more than $25 million a year in net sales. Currently, the minimum corporate tax rate is under 1%. In a controversial move, the board of the second largest school district in the country has voted to ban cell phone use during the school day. Students in Los Angeles will see the policy soon take effect, and districts across the country may follow suit. But some parents are not comfortable with the change. National correspondent Atrel Nashar has a look at the debate.
Across the country, momentum is building behind efforts to separate students from smartphones during the school day.
I think the research is clear, the harmful effects on kids' mental health, the physical health, their academics.
On Tuesday, the Los Angeles Unified School District greenlit a plan to ban phones on campus starting in 2025. The logistics are yet to be worked out. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants to see this statewide. Back in 2019, he signed a law that allows schools to ban phone use. It's a rare area of agreement shared by his political rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who last year signed a law requiring schools to ban phones in class. States all over the country are taking similar steps.
They're not constantly trying to check their phones. They're not constantly, trying to text their friends.
72% of high school teachers in the U.S. and a third of middle school teachers say cell phone distraction is a major problem, according to a new poll by Pew Research Center.
This warning label is...
It was just this week that Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said social media is so harmful to teens, platforms should come with a warning label, like what's on a pack of cigarettes. Some schools have started using special locked pouches, which fit phones, headphones, and smartwatches. And a faculty member has a special device to unlock them at the end of the day.
Now, you'd expect students to be upset if their phones are taken away, but a lot of parents also say they oppose phone bans because they want to be able to reach their child in the event of an emergency, like a school shooting.
It was a text message this morning from my daughter, and it was absolutely horrifying.
In January, when a 17-year-old opened fire at Perry Middle and High School outside Des Moines, for this mom, communication was everything.
The best phone call I got was saying that they were okay.
But that's cut off if phones are banned or locked up. Smartphones have become almost an extension of ourselves. Taking them away would be a major change, for better or worse. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Atra, thank you. Coming up, tens of thousands of acres burning in California and New Mexico. How many buildings have been destroyed in just one village? Then many women don't realize they have postpartum depression, the symptoms to watch out for, and available treatment options. And later, efforts to change street names in California causing controversy, why some boulevard signs have an expiration date. We'll tell you about it on the other side. Firefighters in California and New Mexico battling several large fires, and you can see some of the damage caused by two fires in Ruidoso, New Mexico, consuming more than 23,000 acres just today. Around 1,400 buildings have been destroyed and thousands have been evacuated. Both fires are still 0% contained. In California, the fires are spanning more than 35,000 acres. Wealthy millennial and Gen Z Americans are investing their money very differently than their older counterparts. That's according to a new Bank of America study that found 93% of younger investors plan to increase their holdings in alternatives like crypto and real estate versus only 5% of older investors. Stocks and bonds make up only 47% of millennial and Gen Z investors' portfolios, compared to 74% for those aged over 44. The largest nurses' strike in Oregon history is underway, impacting 6 Providence hospitals. Today was day 2 of a planned 3-day walkout of about 3,000 health professionals. But to keep the hospitals fully open, Providence hired replacement workers on a 5-day contract, keeping the striking nurses out of work until at least Sunday. One negotiation session remains next week before the nurses' contracts officially expire. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. likely won't qualify for next week's debate. Kennedy claims he has enough statewide ballots to earn 270 electoral votes, but according to the Washington Post, he only has enough to earn 100 electoral votes. Kennedy would also have to earn 15% support in 4 national polls, and the deadline to make that happen is tonight. New tensions between the U.S. and Israel as both sides spar over military aid. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the relationship between America and a vital Middle East ally is being put to the test.
It's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies.
This video from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blaming the Biden administration for withholding military aid is not being received well at the White House.
We generally do not know what he's talking about. We just don't.
The State Department said only one shipment of 2,000-pound bombs has been withheld. In May, the president delayed that shipment over civilian casualty concerns in Gaza. Axios reports the Netanyahu video led to the U.S. canceling a high-level meeting scheduled for Thursday between U.S. and Israeli officials discussing Iran. The White House has tiptoed the line between Israeli support and condemnation for the civilian casualty war toll on Palestinians. Netanyahu is set to address Congress in July, an issue that's divided Democrats. Some have already said they won't go.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has created a humanitarian catastrophe. He has also made clear that he does not support U.S. policy for a 2-state solution that will let the people of Israel and the Palestinians develop their own nation.
Progressive New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called Netanyahu a war criminal in response to the video statement and said his congressional invite should be revoked.
While the Iran meeting set for Thursday is canceled, other meetings are still on. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is still meeting with his Israeli counterpart, and Israel's defense minister is still traveling to D.C. next week. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Staff Sergeant Gordon Black sentenced to nearly 4 years in a Russian penal colony. Black was arrested last month and was charged with theft, assault, or threats to kill. In court today, Black pleaded guilty to theft but denied the other allegations. Sergeant Black was on leave from South Korea when he came to Russia in May without permission from the U.S. Army. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Pyongyang signing a huge deal with North Korea to expand their economic and military partnership. The U.S. has accused North Korea of giving Russia weapons to use in Ukraine in exchange for military technology and aid. Both Russian and North Korean leaders have denied there have been weapons transfers, which would break United National Security Council sanctions that Russia previously signed on to. And here's a live look now over Jefferson City, Missouri, where state lawmakers have not responded to Kansas's plan to bring both of Kansas City's professional sports teams across the river from Missouri. One Republican state member in Missouri said a counteroffer isn't likely until at least after the August primary. Kansas legislators approved a plan to authorize state bonds to pay for 2 new stadiums for the Chiefs and Royals. The Missouri Stadium's complex leases up in January 2031, and many believe the teams are playing both sides to get a sweeter taxpayer-funded deal. And tonight, newer medications are now on the market for women with short-term depression after childbirth. But as medical reporter Liz Bonus explains, many women may not recognize the symptoms and reach out for help.
Hey there, everybody. The March of Dimes describes postpartum depression, or PPD as it's known, as a medical condition that many women get after having a baby. PPD can happen anytime after childbirth, but it often starts within 1 to 3 weeks of having a baby, and it needs treatment, they say, to get better. With so much anticipation for the arrival of a new baby, nurse practitioner Megan DeHart of Ohio's TriHealth told me many women just don't anticipate that it's common that sadness can set in.
It's very common. Postpartum blues we see in about 75% of women, but then 1 in 7 will go on to develop postpartum depression.
Baby blues, she says, tend to last up to about 2 weeks, but PPD extends beyond that time. It may include feeling depressed most of the day, feeling shame, guilt, or like a failure, feeling panicked or scared much of the time, or having severe mood swings. You may even think about harming yourself or the baby. There is, however, immediate intervention available through one of 2 medications. There's an IV medication that's been available for several years, and more recently the FDA approved the first pill to treat postpartum depression. It is called zuranolone.
Those are given for 14 days. The patients have specific ways they need to take them. And after that, we monitor closely to make sure that symptoms remit. And it seems like so far the success is good.
But if you've had pre-existing anxiety or depression, Megan says you may need follow-up long-term therapy. So here's what she wants you to know.
Postpartum depression does not mean that you're a bad mother. It doesn't mean you won't be able to take care of your family. With treatment, you should get better.
If you think you may have PPD, tell your healthcare provider. And remember, you can call 988 anytime if you're struggling. It's the suicide prevention hotline, and resources there will refer you to people in your area 24/7. It's in both English and Spanish. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Liz, thank you. More than 30 years after Nirvana changed music history, one of its founders is trying to do the same thing, but this time in politics. More when we return. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Metro Police sharing images of the monolith on social media. The agency wrote, over the weekend, Las Vegas Metro Police Department's search and rescue spotted this mysterious monolith near Gas Peak north of the valley. Las Vegas is not new to seeing these mysterious features pop up. In 2020, a monolith showed up in one of the busiest places, the Fremont Street Experience. The highly reflected prism sat near the entrances of Circa and Golden Nugget. But unlike the first one, this latest monolith is not easy to find.
Chris Novoselic's love for music started at a young age.
I've always been a music fan.
Since he can remember, he listened to 8-track tapes with his dad.
And I would listen to all the great rock and roll music.
And then he started making his own music.
And we started this band. It was called Nirvana. And we just wanted to make music and not be mainstream, to do something new and something different. And we took the influences that we grew up with and we made this new kind of music.
A new kind of music that would start the grunge movement in Seattle in the late 1980s, changing the music industry as we knew it. 30 years after Nirvana ended, Novoselic is again trying to break the mold, this time with a new political party.
Cascade Party is about empowering people, and there's new tools, communication tools to do that, and we're excited about that.
Efforts to change street names are causing controversy in Fresno, California. New Cesar Chavez Boulevard signs will stay up 6 more weeks before a judge decides their future. And that's because an order to stop them was pushed back. Meanwhile, 2 areas in Fresno won't change because county supervisors don't support the plan.
And it is a little bit hodgepodge because you have one side of the street in some areas that are managed by the county, and then on the other, they're managed by the city.
All the old street signs coming down are being saved in case the name change is overruled next month. Coming up, the golf player that was just granted access to the PGA Tour for life and why he gets that distinct honor. Tiger Woods has earned access to the PGA Tour for life. The tour announced a special sponsor exemption based on his exceptional lifetime achievement. Woods is an 82-time winner on the PGA Tour, but since his injuries from a car wreck in 2021, he isn't playing enough to qualify for the signature events, and the exemption now gets him to those 8 tournaments with $20 million purses and a chance to gain the FedEx Cup points. And Pig Pursuit. Take a look at this entertaining video out of Northern California. Police on the move after a piggy named Pickles was reported to be on the loose, sending officers on a chase they could have never expected. They were surprised at the pig's speed as Pickles just kept dodging police down several blocks of a neighborhood there before ultimately being caught. A local resident reportedly then reunited the hog with his mother. And that does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amira David. Have a great night.